The aviation world needed an overhaul. For far too long, an industry that requires precision, attention to detail, and speed had anything but. Rather than sitting around and waiting for things to happen, we decided to do something about it. Imagine a single place to go for all airborne requirements. A place that encompasses all of aviation, using one intelligence to deliver efficiency. That place is here. That place is now. That place is Avfoil, connecting aviation.
The helicopter industry, from where I predominantly come from, has been dying for quite some time, and I think that's not lost on this room, and we need something new. So for us, it's not about if this is going to happen, this is about something that we have to make happen. Avfoil's idea is that in the recessional period, we understood that hyperintelligence was able to bring results even in a very challenging time. And what we did was we effectively brought millions of dollars of profit through understanding at a higher level what the problem was. Now, aviation today is pretty rudimentary when we look at the general infrastructure, and the intelligence needs to increase if we're going to move to this future that we're all talking about here. I think you guys might have seen this chart, Singularity University, great crew. I think they're what we need to watch a few more videos on, because there's a lot of negativity out there in the general public, maybe not in the hype that we see in the promotions, but for a lot of us in the ground zero, it's a scenario where people don't believe this is possible. So if you're a startup or you're an inventor or you're in this problem solve, I just wanted to say the job's getting easier. Every day the technology is advancing, so this job is going to get done. We hear a lot about batteries and how they're not going to work and many things. This is one example of a company that's pushing it forward. I feel confident that eventually they're going to solve it, and probably a lot quicker than you think. Yep, battery's way off. That's true. But there's lots we can do right now to fix that problem and work with what we have to get these aircraft in the air and start using them, because we need to prove to people that this is real. If we keep talking about it, it's going to make it harder for us to get the job done, and we need it to move faster than it is. In Taiwan, Gogoro with their scooter, they've got a removable battery. I know all of you are designing in your secret labs and many things to yourself, but maybe you need to think about sharing a battery design in the intermediate process while these batteries aren't really what we need, so that we can remove those cells and fuel up like we would with Jet A1 in that intermediate period. Because we really want these electric vehicles in the air, because there's a fundamental issue that we're trying to challenge here, and I'll talk about more later, is 1 kg, 1 mile is the discussion that every company, doesn't matter what you do in aviation, should be talking about every morning to make sure that the company is focused on that problem. Franz Josef Glacier, 1998. I was working over there with a company that does tourism. They landed 8,500 feet on one of our highest mountainsides, and at that time, that helicopter you can see there is an AS350D model. It was pretty power limited, and at that time, no one thought you could ever make anything better for the AS350 airframe. That was the absolute maximum. So what we did was we reduced the fuel loading. So we'd take the fuel loading down to 60 to 40% so that we could land up there when we needed to. If we wanted to do a longer flight, we would reduce the amount of people. I wanted to give this example because I wanted to show you that even though the perfect scenario doesn't exist for us right now, actually we already have a lot that we can work with, and we really need to get those things out there and get them working. I'm seeing a lot of negative press in the verbal side. So when we're in the industries and we're talking to them saying, hey, look, we're going to do this. This is what we're trying to do. They laugh. They say, yeah, good one. I think Blade Runner's coming in 2062. One of those articles there, apparently Uber could have been confused with an April Fool's Day trick. The guy on the other side is saying that we already had air mobility, so what are you talking about, Silicon Valley? It's already here. And yeah, okay, so we had some things, but I think we've come a long way, and yes, we do have something new that we should be proud of. So yeah, forget the negativity and try and push forward, because the people who are in this room are going to be the people that are going to help change that paradigm within the headspaces of the people that are on ground zero, because we need those people to believe, not just this room. All the questions are fair. I admit that. I admit that we've got a lot of problems to solve. New Zealand is a problem-solving country. We're used to solving problems. Some of you may have heard of Rocket Lab. We're now putting satellites into the air cheaper than anybody else. So that's up into the space environment. And we did it right down in New Zealand. Cora's down there testing their products. Products like FPOS, which ended up being Interact, were first tested there. New Zealand's a great place for innovation because we move fast to see what the problem is, respond to that problem, forget about what the issues are, and just get to work and get them solved. Most of you will know Peter Diamandis, and I thought I'd just bring it in because sometimes it's quite daunting talking to people about air mobility and the future of aviation. And, you know, yeah, okay, when's that going to happen? Everything is accelerating around us, and he said that the future is faster than we think, and I'd have to agree, because as we sit here as a startup and as something that is getting out there and creating a new product and a new way of thinking, every day I see either a new piece of competition or a new piece of technology that I should either be worried about or impressed by. So I feel confident that we're getting more and more tools every day. Every code line we write, which is done on a daily basis by companies like ourselves and many others in this room. This is another one from Singularity University. A lot of plagiarism here. Now, where are we on the scale? That's going to be somebody else to tell you that, but my guess is we're around 0.5. But before we can design all of the steps through to 6, we need to think about 6, because if you don't know where you're going, how are you even going to fly there or move there? And it was brought up earlier by Wheels Up, you know, that democratizing of our scenario is going to be very, very important. And I'm not talking about to the users now, I'm talking about to the general public. Because I think most people keep talking about how regulation and public opinion are going to be big issues in us getting this up in the air. So what we need to be doing is, how are we going to engage the public and tell them that what we're doing here is actually more than just flying someone around? We need a new narrative. That was also talked about earlier this morning. This is something we threw together really quickly. Obviously, it's not the perfect example, but what I wanted to portray here is, here's an example that really is looking at something more than just flying someone from the Hamptons to their high-rise building in downtown New York. What you don't realize when you promote that, and I think it's great because those are your customers now and you need to get to those guys, but you're also simultaneously alienating the same people that are going to give you the vote that allows you to get these things in the air over cities. You need to explain to these people, and if we did a study of youth now, because a lot of them are being done, they think the earth is going to finish in a fiery ball. So if we can give these guys a hope for the future like Singularity University is, and they're saying that technology is actually the answer to us having a more stable use of the environment in our scenario, educating and promoting to the public what it is to be involved in tech is not just about flying VIPs around. This is about giving our youth a future, giving the grandparents something to smile about because they know that there's something out there. It must be horrible for the kids now, and we're seeing a lot of press around that, where they don't actually know if they've got a future. And I hope that these people in this room and myself and the team that Avfoil is putting together is going to help create that future. And we really want to promote a new narrative so that it's easier for us to get this done. And that new narrative needs to be more than VIP transport. I wanted to make a short note because someone made me aware of this while I was telling them about what I was going to say. We're aware that obviously, EV and electric production is not exactly renewable at this point at over 50%. But in New Zealand it is. It's about 90% renewable. So we know it's possible. We know we can do it. Once again, we're leading the way in the world. about understanding what it is. We do have a perfect scenario, I'm aware of that, but at the same time, I think with an open mind, a lot of other countries could be involved in renewables as well, and it's very important for this narrative that we're going to need that happens. An intermediate change is going to be required. So we want to create the future, but let's come back to where we are now. What is it that we can actually do now to get us ready to enhance aviation? To all of us in this room, it's very real. When I go back down and I speak to the guys at the helicopter maintenance companies or the flight ops companies, they look at you and have a laugh and they say, have you got a lightsaber as well? So what we have to do is get down there and explain to these guys. And this was a room that was in Brazil. If any of you don't know what that is, that's actually the AOG room for Airbus. They have another one in Marianne, which I've seen as well. Super impressive what they're doing. In very basic terms, their staff can see quite quickly what their problem is, how they're going to solve it, how well they're solving it, and get it done effectively. They speed up time by having those dashboards there in that room. And we need more of this. Most operators, most maintenance people out there don't have that in front of them, and they need it. We're going to have to go right down into the everyday workers. If we talk to the guy with a spanner, and I hear a lot about pilot problems and things like that, but I actually believe maintenance is going to be our bigger issue. We can train a reasonable pilot in 10 years, and a reasonable engineer starts around 30 to 40 years. So it takes a lot longer to develop that infrastructure. And what we need to do is go down to those guys in the maintenance and somehow get them to believe that it's not just about putting a nut on a bolt. It's actually about recording what you're doing so we can analyze it, improve it, and the goal of getting all of these guys working more efficient is only going to be done by data recording. It's also the job of companies like Avfoil and some other companies in this room to go out and find ways to either semi-automate or automate that data collection area so that we're not asking people to get onto a keystroke to try and pull in the data. This is Wetzel support today. It already exists. So we're not actually talking about the future, we're talking about right now. And I know you have a lot of problems in your urban environment, but in New Zealand, if you're on a Saturday morning and you suddenly decide that you want to take a picnic on the mountain, we'll just go out and hire a helicopter and go up there $160 later each for 4 of us, and we're having a picnic, and then we're going to walk down. It's very normal for us to use a helicopter to pour concrete on the top of a building, lift in a mast. People do landscaping with helicopters, slinging in art structures and many other things. This transitional process is going to be a big deal, and that is about getting out there right now and making those changes with what we've got. It's about working through the problem from an incremental sense, as was mentioned earlier this morning. I couldn't agree with it more. It's death by 1,000 cuts. That's how we're going to get this problem done. It's not about one big problem that we're suddenly going to solve. And believe it or not, some of the questions that haven't been answered and have been asked in this room already already have answers. It's just you're not aware that the people developing those answers are not quite releasing them to you. So we as a company already have some of those answers, and there'll be other people in this room that do as well. Deployment of 2 times what we have today in 5 years would be impossible under the current infrastructure. So that would mean if we went to our helicopter company that I represent in New Zealand as well, does 54 helicopters locally, 80 throughout New Zealand. It's the largest buyer of Airbus parts in the APAC. And you said to them, look, I'm going to bring you a contract that's going to bring you out to 108 helicopters from your 54, and I need it in a year. They'd look at you and laugh and say, I think you need to find someone else with a magic wand. You're not going to get it done. The only way we're going to fix this is that we're going to need to analyze data, collect it, break it down, and find out a way to get that existing workforce to do the same amount of hours at work, but double the amount of productivity. And most of that is going to be done through big data and greater understanding of our problems. I thought this was quite funny because we've got these big manufacturers, they're coming out, Airbus and Bell, that are going to have to come down and think about how they're going to shrink down their vehicles. When I look at the Nexus and I look at the City Bus, they're great vehicles, but it worries me because I look at them and they look like $11 million. Now, maybe they can get it down to 5 or 7, I don't know, but I don't know that we're going to see mass air transport long term if we're talking about an $11 million vehicle as being one of the core vehicles. We're going to need a lot lower than that. Maybe it's 2 million, I don't know. But a good example of that, because part of what I do is data analytics, is that if we look at the AS 350, which is now called the H125, and the Bell 407, both those list prices are in the mid 3 million range or above. And the ROI on those products is almost gone. And it seems to be lost on the manufacturer that they're driving their product into a non-ROI situation. We're watching the second-hand market grow because nobody wants to buy a new one because there's no money. We need to create 1 kg, 1 mile attitude. We need to do what WhatsApp did to the phone and so many other industries has done. This is about a race to zero. If your business model is not a race to zero, then you aren't creating the future. You're just collecting money. And we need a future. It's one thing to create a vehicle in the air, and that's going to be massive. But it's going to take a massive, massive effort to get that cost per mile down to something close to the road so it's viable. I wanted to introduce the Avfoil team a little bit. Liz Martinez is my co-founder. She's not here with us today. We've got some great teams through here in Seattle, Hamish, and out in West Virginia, we've got our architect, Justin, one of the main people developing what we have today, New York City, and in Mexico City, Sahid. So we've got a team spread out over the earth, and we're really working hard every day since 2011 to work faster, work more intelligent, to educate people like we are when we come, even here in this room, there's people that are going to need more understanding around how we're going to fix the problems. We have some great partners. Track Plus, who's in the room here today with 3 of their team. Everybody in this room should know Track Plus by the end of this conference. Track Plus is going to be instrumental to what we want to do. And the reason is because they have a lot of the answers to how we're going to track aircraft in the air, how we're going to communicate with those aircraft in the air. We had some discussions earlier today about understanding about where the mobile connectivity was versus the satellite connectivity. They already have those answers right here, right now. So if there's anyone in the room who wants to know those answers, have a talk to Oliver, who's here. I'm sure he'll help with some of those answers. We have partnered with Track Plus to talk about how we're going to develop an air mobility platform. It can be either in the back end or in the front end. We already have a flight product now in BASIC, and we'll put it out there. But if you're developing some sort of mobility product and you want rideshare, we're going to give you the ability to track your aircraft anywhere in the world, and that's done through Track Plus. XE, also here in the room. Great guys. We've been saving around 50,000 US dollars in a $1 million transaction by using XE. It's another example of 1,000 slices to kill the problem. It's the little things that matter. If you go to your bank today, and now I know in USA, you're primarily in US, but for 75% of the market, we're not in your currency, and we're going to have to convert. And these guys here are another example how we can save money, and that each little bit that we save is super important. The final one I have on the list here is Company X. They're doing work for Cisco in USA, and they're based in New Zealand. Another example of how New Zealand is being used by US tech companies that are very, very good at doing what they do to get their job fixed. So we want you to think outside of the US, into Canada, into everywhere, into Australia, into New Zealand for your problem solve. This is going to be a team effort to get it done. And yes, some of us are going to lose in the process and some of us will win. But it is 100% a team effort. And I know the manufacturers are likely to be the main winners here. But I think, as it was indicated in the previous talk 2 back, is that startups provide a lot of the economy to get a problem solved and to get us forward. Finally, I wanted to thank Revolution Aero, because if it wasn't for conferences like this, and there are others starting up, but this one has been one of the first, and it's a great conference. We wouldn't have that room where we can discuss these problems and talk about them, because there's still a lot of debate that is required to solve the problem, and we shouldn't be scared of that debate as we move forward. Avfoil hopefully will help solve some of those answers, but we understand that partnerships are going to be a big part of how we're going to get this done. We're not here to take over the whole room or the whole area. We're here to provide a solution for part of the problem, and that's really what we're about. So thank you all for listening today.